I am Mr. Bennett, and I help to coordinate the chapels along with Pastor Saltzman. And I just have a little bit of information to sort of set the tone for chapel again before moving into next week, spiritual life emphasis week. So if you could put up my slides. The theme verse for the year was introduced previously, Ephesians 3:17 to 19. So I just wanted to put that up in front of you again and highlight some things that I think really fit who we are as a school. So I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, I think we hope that this community can provide a place where you are rooted and established in love. May have the power together, and of course we in chapel being together and sharing together, we think it's very important to learn and grow together with all the Lord's holy people, to grasp, and that's a word that is very much as teachers and within education, we want you to be able to not just know, but to actually grasp, to experience, to understand, and experiencing, particularly in chapel, God's love, right? So how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge. It's not just a head, it's something that we desire you to experience and to understand how great it is, so that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. And that would be just great. We could all be filled with the full measure of God and be able to live out of that power inside of us. So this is the theme verse for this year. And to go along with the theme verse, we also have sort of a monthly themes. So if you go to the next slide. Throughout each month, we have specific things that we've sort of laid out to do ahead of time. And so we like to hit on this topic. Most of the chapels are not necessarily going to be on this topic, but we like to sort of focus some chapels around these themes throughout the year. So just so you know, we're working with kind of a theme verse, and we're working with some monthly themes, and then also, of course, your input, what topics are coming up, and what people are in the area to speak. So just be aware of that, and if you see anything up there that sort of strikes an idea in your mind, we're always ready to hear from you. Next slide. So I took feedback. Freshmen, you weren't here, but the upperclassmen were all here in chapel, and we wrote down ideas. A lot of the things that I said we could be more specific on, we didn't necessarily all be more specific, but we got some good feedback. And so I sort of have two things that I want to say as sort of my response to your feedback and to set the tone. And so one thing was very clear is that we have an increasingly diverse student body, and that diverse body desires increasing forms of expression. A lot about cultural expression with our international students, but also a lot about different forms of chapel happening in different backgrounds of speakers. And so within that, there was a lot of requests for a variety of students. So if we have a variety of expressions and desires to have that be expressed in chapel, then we would need a variety of types of students to step up to provide that. And also teachers were mentioned as being something that you guys love to hear perspective from. So one thing, of course, is this involves us, right? We cannot accomplish sort of this increased sharing of diversity without you guys stepping up to participate. And then the next piece you can click on. I heard this quote at the beginning of this year as I was beginning to think about chapel, and I liked it. You don't have to like the worm when fishing, and I don't know where this is, so sorry if I'm breaking the intellectual integrity. I put it in quotes, but it was just a quote that I heard, so I'm not sure what it was. But you don't have to like the worm when fishing. It's not for you. You don't have to like the music when worshiping. It's not for you. So I thought this really helps to give the idea of focus of, okay, we're talking about what we want in chapel, right? What do you guys want in chapel? And chapel is about learning and sharing together and growing as individuals, but of course we don't gather here for us. At least that's not the only purpose. A big purpose of us gathering here is to glorify and worship God. And so music was pulled out this quote as one way we express worship, but we believe that we express worship in many ways that are beyond music. And so everything we do here in chapel and how we learn and grow and express with each other can be a form of worship, and that we are growing and better able to express and understand God's love. And that is a form of worship. That's what He created us to do. And so I also want to keep in perspective, while it is about us and how we can grow and you guys stepping up to provide that, it's also about every day coming in and thinking, you know what, this really is not about me. How can I put my personal preferences aside to join together in worshiping God? And we will grow in love, just as the verse said, if we are able to do that. So I challenge you to think about, where is your focus when you come to chapel? Are you thinking that didn't really fit what I wanted, or that wasn't very interesting? Or are you actually focusing on, okay, this is all about God, and how can learning about different people and putting my preferences aside help me to grow in understanding that? Next slide. So I come back to the verse, and Dr. Swartzentruber talked to us on Wednesday about setting goals, and I sort of gave you some things to think about in the previous slide. So I want you to just take a moment and look at this verse and think about what type of spiritual goal related to how you express worship either in chapel or in school overall. What's some sort of a goal that you can set that has to do with this verse? And of course, we'll continue to challenge you to stretch yourself in different ways. So think about that goal and how you can take that first step, right?